When I woke up, the world had changed. Everyone had become an idiot, and I was the only normal person left. They didn't know how much a $100 bill was worth. They had no idea how to use a smartphone. They didn't even know how to use a fork to eat. I was ecstatic. I was going to save humanity. I taught them basic math, how to change the channel on a TV, the steps to cook a meal, and how to get food out of the refrigerator. I became a global superstar. They called me the savior of the world. But I soon discovered that things were about to get terrifying. It all started on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday morning. I was heading to school, same as always. The moment I stepped out the door, a sedan came screaming down the street, swerving right at me. It shot past with a roar, narrowly missing the wall of my apartment building. I was still shaking, muttering a few choice words at the vanishing car before hurrying toward school. Waiting to cross the street at a red light, I noticed everyone was just standing there, completely still. Why is this intersection so packed? I wondered. I thought maybe there had been an accident, but they were just standing there, frozen. When the light turned green, I started walking. Suddenly, someone behind me shouted, "He's moving! He's moving!" I glanced back, confused. The entire crowd was staring at me with looks of utter shock, as if I'd just performed a magic trick. I ignored them and booked it to school. But when I got to the main entrance, another bizarre scene was waiting for me. Dozens of students were just standing around the courtyard, gazing into space, seemingly lost. I spotted my classmate, Kevin Miller, in the crowd. I pushed my way over to him. "What are you guys doing standing out here? The first bell's about to ring. Aren't you going to class?" Kevin just stared at me with a blank, innocent expression. "I want to," he said, his voice slow, "but I forgot where my classroom is." I gave him a weird look and pointed to the student ID clipped to his polo shirt. "Dude, it's written right here. Senior year, homeroom 301. What's wrong with you? Did you fry your brain studying for the SATs again last night?" I figured Kevin had been up all night with his prep books again without telling me. As the only kid in our class with a real shot at the Ivy League, he was the definition of a gunner. He aced every monthly exam and had been in the top 10 of our entire school in every midterm and final for the last 3 years. But what Kevin said next completely stunned me. He looked down at his own ID, scratched his head, and looked back at me with genuine confusion. "What do these letters say?" I thought he had to be messing with me. I grabbed his arm and dragged him toward the main building. When we got to our homeroom, it was chaos. Kids were yelling, whacking each other with textbooks. Then, our homeroom teacher, Mr. Davison, walked in. The room went dead silent. Everyone sat up straight. Mr. Davison walked to the front of the class and asked if we had all finished last night's homework. A knot of panic tightened in my stomach. I remembered I'd been up late playing video games, which is why I'd woken up late. The homework was, of course, not done. Anyone who didn't finish, just stand up. Let's not make a big deal out of this. Defeated, I pushed my chair back and stood up. The whole class turned to look at me, snickering and whispering. Mr. Davison just sighed and shook his head. "Knew it would be you, Leo. Go stand in the back." I grabbed my textbook and trudged to the back of the classroom. The bell rang, and Mr. Davison started the lesson. He told us to open our literature books to page 58. The room filled with the sound of rustling pages. I glanced at the kid next to me. He was fumbling with his book, flipping pages back and forth, completely lost. I leaned over and flipped it to the right page for him. "Here you go." I didn't expect his reaction. His eyes went wide, and he stared at me like I was some kind of alien. He slowly gave me a thumbs up. "Awesome," he whispered. I just shrugged and waved it off. Mr. Davison continued the lesson. He asked if anyone could read the poem on the page aloud. The classroom was silent. Everyone looked down at their desks. The teacher called on a few of the top students in the class, one by one. Their answers were shockingly identical. "I don't know the words." Holy crap! I stared at them in disbelief. These were the certified geniuses of our grade. How could they not read a simple poem? Mr. Davison called on a few more students, but they all said the same thing. Seeing the teacher's face grow darker by the second, I tentatively raised my hand. I can give it a try." And so I began to read, "Once upon a midnight dreary," while I pondered, "weak and weary." When I finished the stanza, every single student in the room was staring at me with a strange expression. It was a mix of shock, confusion, and suspicion. Mr. Davison was looking at me, his jaw practically on the floor. He said something that left me speechless. I only recognized the first 3 words. You. You can read the whole thing. After class, I sat by the window dazed. Something was seriously wrong. I kept replaying what Mr. Davison said in my head, and it almost made me laugh. A teacher who only knows 3 words. You gotta be kidding me. The more I thought about it, the more I was convinced this was some elaborate prank they were all playing on me. But why? I couldn't figure it out. Just then, I felt the urgent need to use the restroom. I got up to leave. Kevin suddenly blocked my path. Where are you going? I roll my eyes. To the bathroom. Where else? He looked stunned, his eyes wide. You know where the bathroom is. I shove him aside. What kind of stupid question is that? But to my surprise, Kevin became incredibly agitated. He pointed at me and started shouting at the top of his lungs. He knows it's a stupid question. He knows it's a stupid question. Judging by his expression, you would have thought he'd just discovered the meaning of life. I decided he was officially nuts and tried to walk out of the classroom, ignoring him. That's when a few of the bigger, athletic guys from the class, the jocks, stepped in front of me, their faces grim. You can't leave, one of them said. I was getting angry now and pushed them back. And why the hell not? Their intellect might have taken a nosedive, but their ability to throw a punch was apparently still intact. The second I laid a hand on them, they swarmed me, and I was on the floor getting pummeled. Okay, I won't go. I yelled, shielding my head. They finally stopped. I held a hand to my mouth, feeling the sting on my face and the metallic taste of blood on my lip. A moment later, Mr. Davison rushed in. I thought my salvation had arrived. I scrambled to my feet and pointed at the guys who had just beaten me up. Mr. Davison, Jake, and his friends just attacked me. But to my astonishment, Mr. Davison stared at me with cold, hard eyes. He pointed a finger at me and said to the empty doorway, "That's him, the one who read the entire poem." Before I could process what was happening, a group of people in full hazmat suits stormed into the room, carrying disinfectant sprayers. Without a word, they started hosing me down. Before I could even react, a thick black plastic bag was pulled over my head. I felt myself being lifted and carried out of the school and into a vehicle. Panic finally set in. "Where are you taking me?" I screamed. The only answer I got was a cold, hard fist to the jaw. And then, everything went black. When I came to, I was in what looked like a laboratory. I was in a small, sealed room with transparent glass walls. Outside, a few people in white lab coats were pointing at me and talking amongst themselves. Seeing that I was awake, an older man with glasses spoke into a microphone. "Who are you?" I ignored him and pulled the torn plastic bag off my head. I realized my hands and feet were tied, but the knot was a simple slip knot. I undid it easily. The moment they saw me free myself, the scientists outside panicked and slammed a large red button on their console. The lights in my room dimmed, and red emergency lights began to flash, accompanied by a blaring alarm. While I was still trying to figure out what was going on, another team in hazmat suits rushed in. I scrambled backward. "What are you doing? This is illegal. This is kidnapping." Hearing my shouts, the old man outside spoke again. "Everyone out." The hazmat team retreated, leaving me alone and terrified. Before I could catch my breath, the old man's voice came over the speaker again. "Tell me, how did you read that entire poem?" I was bewildered and angry. "I just read it. It's easy. Can't you guys do that?" The scientists outside fell silent, murmuring to each other. Then the old man asked, "Easy? You can recognize all those words?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Recognize them? I can recite the whole thing from memory. Now let me out of here, or I swear I'm calling the cops." The old man actually chuckled at that. "We are the police," he said. "You just claimed you can recite an entire poem from memory. Is that true?" I stared at them, completely baffled. Why would the police arrest me for that? Then they told me the absolutely insane truth. Right now, there's no one on earth who can recognize more than 100 words. You're the only person who can read and comprehend a full text. We need to study you. Study me. The words sent a chill down my spine. My mind immediately jumped to images of scalpels, operating tables, and my brain being sliced into thin sections. At the same time, what he said, as unbelievable as it was, started to make sense of my day. The star student turned moron, unable to find his own classroom or read. The pedestrians who couldn't figure out a crosswalk light. How are you going to study me?" I asked, hugging myself protectively. A younger, bespectacled scientist handed the old man a clipboard. The old man scribbled something on it and held it up to the glass. I'm going to ask you a question. What is the answer to this problem? If you answer correctly, we'll let you go. I figured it must be some kind of impossibly complex equation. But when I looked at the paper, all it said was 2 plus 1 equals. I couldn't believe it. This is way too easy. I thought for a moment, then answered tentatively, is it 3? The moment I said it, the group outside erupted. They started talking excitedly, pointing at me and the clipboard. Watching them, I knew this wasn't an act. They looked like they had just discovered a new continent. The old man's voice was filled with excitement. You weren't lying. You really are a genius. It turned out the whole thing was an IQ test. They told me there was no one left on the planet as intelligent as me. They opened the door and welcomed me out, saying they wanted me to teach them numbers and letters. Seeing their fanatical devotion was unsettling. They asked me if there was anything I wanted. All I said was, I just want to go home. 4. When I got home, my parents were already asleep. I lay in my bed, trying to process the day's absurd events. Eventually, I drifted off. The next morning, I woke up to a massive crowd of people camped out on my front lawn. They were all reporters, shoving cameras and microphones in my face, asking me the most idiotic questions imaginable. Sir, is it true you can read and recite an entire poem? Sir, a source of the National Science Agency says you solved a complex problem that took them hours to compute. Can you confirm this? Sir, my ears were ringing. My small house was packed with people. One reporter pushed his way to the front. Can you please demonstrate how to open a refrigerator door? I stared at him. You walk up to the fridge and you pull the handle. To make it easier for them to understand, I even walked over to my own fridge and demonstrated. They all nodded, their faces a mask of pure astonishment. Then, another reporter held out 2 bills. Which one of these is $100? I rolled my eyes, plucked the $100 bill from his hand, and held it up. This one. Again, they gasped in amazement. Then came a flood of other bizarre questions. Why do elephants eat with their noses? Why don't king cobras wear crowns? What does a person cross the street? Every single question was mind-numbingly simple. It was then that I finally, truly understood. The entire world had become a planet of morons. 5. I stopped going to school. There was no point anymore. Besides, after my own teacher called what were basically government agents on me, I had no desire to ever go back. Thanks to the media coverage, my fame exploded. Rich and powerful people from all over started seeking me out. They all wanted the same thing, to become smart like me. Looking at the crowd of wealthy, clueless elites, an idea struck me. I started a small school right in my living room, offering in-person lessons. I thought about doing classes online, but I quickly realized none of them knew how to use apps for payment or donations, so that plan went out the window. Even so, my classes were packed every single day. I made a fortune. With my new wealth, I took my parents to a high-end real estate agency to look at houses. Thanks to my celebrity status, the sales agent treated us like royalty. She was incredibly enthusiastic. Mr. Carter, you've come at the perfect time. Our luxury homes are selling incredibly well, and the prices are fantastic. Please, take a look and pick anyone you like. The woman, sharp and professional, gave us a tour of a model home in an exclusive gated community. But for me, money was no longer an object. I waved my hand dismissively and pointed to the largest mansion in the entire development. How much for that one? I expected her to quote some astronomical figure. Instead, she froze. She looked at me, her expression a mix of conflict and embarrassment. I can't seem to remember the price. Mr. Carter, perhaps. You could just make an offer. I was taken aback by the suggestion, but I recovered quickly. I thought for a moment, then reached into my pocket, pulled out a $10 bill, and held it out to her. Would this be enough? She giggled nervously. Oh, Mr. Carter, you're too kind. You know we're not as smart as you. Please don't tease me. And just like that, I bought the most luxurious, fully furnished mansion in the community for $10. It was then I realized that money had lost its meaning in this new world. As long as you could talk a good game, you could get anything you wanted for pennies. I used the same trick to buy a fleet of luxury cars. House cars, I had it all. I was suddenly surrounded by admirers and groupies. They might have been dumb, but they were undeniably beautiful. I moved my parents into the mansion and started living the high life, juggling several girlfriends at once. In the span of a single month, my life had hit its absolute peak. But right when I was getting comfortable, the scientists who had abducted me showed up again. The white-haired old man, Dr. Thorne, told me, as the most knowledgeable person in the world, you have a responsibility to shoulder the burden of saving humanity. I gave him a look you'd give an idiot, which I suppose he now was. Don't be ridiculous, I said. I'm just a regular guy. You want me to save the whole world? No thanks. He looked at me intently. I may be slow, but I'm not a fool. I can see you're not a bad person, Leo. But I can't bear to watch human civilization grind to a halt, or worse, descend into chaos. I waved my hand dismissively. Look around. The world seems fine, doesn't it? We're all just a little slower. Life goes on. He kept arguing, insisting that since I had the ability, I shouldn't be so lazy and complacent. I told him I wasn't. Spider-Man. There was no "with great power comes great responsibility" clause in my life. I was a normal person, and a selfish one at that. He eventually left, defeated. He couldn't win an argument against me. As he walked away, he said that while he couldn't read books or solve complex equations anymore, he understood one simple truth. The world would eventually spiral into madness. And if I didn't make a decision soon, I would live to regret it. I didn't pay him any mind. I went back to enjoying my new life. My story was now global news. Everyone on the planet knew who I was. They even invited me to participate in an international competition to prove my abilities. 6. It was a televised spectacle watched by the entire world, and I was the star. The competition was held in the world's largest sports arena, broadcast live from New York City. The host's voice boomed. And now let the games begin. First question, what number comes between 3 and 5? 4. I answered without a moment's hesitation. The other contestants on stage were still staring blankly at the screen, deep in thought. Correct. Second question, if you want to drink water, what is the first thing you must do? Pick up a glass, I said. Correct. Third question, what is the first thing a person does every morning? Open their eyes. Correct. Unbelievable, folks. He's answered 3 in a row. By this point, every other contestant had been eliminated. It was just me, standing across from the host. The host's expression turned serious. He announced to the roaring crowd, and now, for the final round, we will challenge Mr. Carter with 3 questions from the world of mathematics. First question, if you have 6 apples, how do you divide them equally between 2 people? Each person gets 3. Correct. Second question, there are 4 people, but only 1 door. How do they get through? 1 at a time. Correct. This is simply a miracle. The entire stadium erupted in thunderous applause. Spotlights washed over me. This was my moment. A month ago, I couldn't have dreamed of this, but now here I was, standing at a height no one else could even imagine. And now, for the final question. The most difficult question of our century. Please, tell us, how many fingers does a human being have? 10, I said calmly. A wave of joyous shouting swept through the crowd. People were cheering, hugging, holding up their hands to count. Because of me, they now knew they had 10 fingers. After that, my name was known in every corner of the globe. But being in the spotlight isn't always a good thing. With fame came danger. My performance during the quiz show, answering questions the instant they appeared, was too much for them. It was incomprehensible. People started whispering that I had to be an alien or an advanced robot. I didn't offer any explanation. Any attempt would just lead to more questions I couldn't answer. Just as I was preparing to return home, their military took me into custody. Their reason, I was too intelligent and could easily be used to start wars between nations. I was locked away in a deep underground cell. The funny thing was, they didn't even bother to lock the door. They figured no one, not even me, could possibly escape from a facility that's secure. It wasn't until I casually walked out of my room that they stared in shock and finally slammed the heavy door shut. I asked their commander why they had arrested me. You are a dangerous individual, he said. If we don't secure you, we fear you will be exploited by others. For once, they were actually thinking logically, but I'd never once considered doing something like that. I was just a normal guy whose life goal had been to make some money, buy a house, and marry a pretty girl. But now, the world was different. I was the most special person on the planet. Didn't that also mean I had the power to change it? Dr. Thorne's warning echoed in my mind. The military's paranoia gave me an idea. The feeling of being different, of being special, sparked a new ambition. Maybe I could try it. Maybe I could unite the entire world under my leadership. I couldn't beat them in a fight, but I could trick them. They were, after all, dumb enough to believe almost anything. So one day, when a soldier brought me my meal, I grabbed his hand and looked at him with sheer terror in my eyes. "The world is about to end," I whispered frantically. "If you don't let me out of here, I won't be able to save you." They had already witnessed my intelligence. They took my words as gospel. The news shot up the chain of command, and that very night, they released me. They took me to a highly secret location, a command center filled with world leaders and top brass. They were all discussing something in hushed, serious tones. I overheard 3 words: extraterrestrial threat. A man in his 70s, a top general, looked at me with deep worry in his eyes. "What must we do to prevent the world from being destroyed?" I told them. "You must destroy all of your weapons. That is the only way to prevent war from breaking out." Someone immediately raised an objection. "But what if someone attacks us?" I explained patiently. "You can fight back with anything around you. A stick, a broom, a chair, even the keyboard from your computer." They thought what I said made perfect sense. And so, they actually did it. They dismantled their arsenals of high-powered weaponry and, in their place, picked up wooden clubs and pipes. Then they asked me what to do next. I told them I needed to return to my own country to formulate the next phase of the strategy. They agreed without question, and I was on a plane home that day. I thought I had finally escaped their control. My plan was to build up my own power base and conquer the world. But I never imagined they would broadcast my warning to the entire planet. Almost no one stopped to question if the news was real. The world went insane. People with any physical strength took whatever weapons they could find and flooded the streets, unleashing their most primal instincts. Violence erupted across the globe. Cities, once beacons of civilization, became breeding grounds for brutality. I never thought things would turn out like this. When people had finally exhausted their rage on property and random strangers, they turned their attention to me. The lie had come from my mouth. They decided I was the root of all evil. The world had been peaceful and simple, they reasoned, until I appeared and made everything different. People began marching in the streets, holding banners demanding my head. They threatened to burn down my house, capture my family, and execute me in a public square. In their simple logic, they believed that if I died, the disaster would simply vanish. That's when I knew I had screwed up big time. I tried to tell everyone, "It's all fake. I was lying to you. Please just go home." But it was too late. Someone in the crowd pointed out that since I had lied to them once, they couldn't be sure I hadn't lied to them before. And they couldn't be sure I wasn't lying to them right now. The flawless logic left me speechless. I suddenly realized they weren't entirely stupid. They were just unsophisticated. A girl stood at the front of the mob, holding a protest sign high. "Destroy him," she screamed. The disaster began with him. The mob surged into my mansion, smashing and destroying everything. And in the ultimate betrayal, my own parents joined the crowd hunting for me. Soon I was captured. I was stunned by my parents' betrayal. But they just looked at me with disgust and said I wasn't their son. I was a monster. Their words hit me like a physical blow. Of course, from their perspective, I was the anomaly. I was the freak. Everyone else was the same. Why did I have to be different? In that moment, I realized that maybe I deserved to die. The old scientist, Dr. Thorne, was right. If I had made a better choice at the beginning, I wouldn't have ended up here, waiting for my own execution. But just as I was resigning myself to my fate, someone else spoke up. We shouldn't let him die so easily. He should be put to work to do more useful things for us. This statement seemed to calm the crowd. They began to discuss what I should be used for. Someone said, "He knows how to cross at a crosswalk. He should teach everyone how to tell the difference between the 2 colors." Another person said, "He knows math. He should teach everyone how to count." The arguments went back and forth, as if they believed I was only capable of doing one thing at a time. Then, a young woman in the crowd stepped forward. "Why can't we just have him do one thing, and we all follow him?" A wave of understanding washed over the crowd. I knew too much. So, they decided I would go back to living my old life. I would go to school, and they would all follow me, learning as I did. But they quickly discovered a problem. With everyone in school, there was no one left to repair the city's infrastructure. The power grid started failing. Few people were left to drive trucks, so store shelves went bare. Money became completely useless. Food started running out. This, they decided, was a bad plan. Grumbling started to spread. What is the point of us following him around every day? Once the question was asked, the answer came quickly. It was pointless. I was originally just a high school student. All I knew was basic academic knowledge. I didn't know how to farm. I couldn't fix an electrical circuit. I had no idea how to repair a car engine. They gradually began to realize that I wasn't as amazing as they had thought. As for the world-ending disaster I had predicted, it seemed to have been forgotten. No one cared if it was real anymore. And so, one day, they all just walked away and went back to their own lives. I was once again just a normal person. They ignored me completely. My parents had left me to live what they considered a better life. I was all alone. I didn't even have a place to live. I wandered the city, a ghost in my own world, and for the first time, I felt a profound loneliness. It wasn't the loneliness of fame fading away. It was the loneliness of being utterly abandoned by the entire human race. I started to think that being too smart wasn't such a great thing after all. I wanted to fit back in, to become one of them, but I couldn't. I couldn't pretend not to know what a red light meant. I couldn't fake not knowing how to count. The things that were so ordinary in my old world were extraordinary here. I didn't even know how I got here. I was sick of this life. And that's when I saw the aliens. I mean, real, honest-to-God aliens. They were discussing how to take over the planet. Since the people of this world had become so simple, it would take minimal effort to gain complete control. I hid in the shadows, listening to their plan. They intended to domesticate humanity, to raise them like livestock. That way, humans would live forever in their own little worlds, guided only by instinct. As long as a species couldn't think critically, it posed no threat. They planned to harvest humanity in 1 year. By then, the Earth would be theirs. I memorized every word they said and ran to tell everyone. But no one would believe me. They looked right through me or just rolled their eyes. International news outlets scoffed at my claims. The man once called the world's smartest person has deceived us before, one anchor said. He is not a credible source. He is the world's biggest liar. The real estate agent I'd bought my mansion from came forward in an interview. He bought a mansion from me for $10. He just took advantage of the fact that I was dumb and didn't know the value of money. He used his so-called intelligence to trick us. One by one, people I had interacted with came forward to denounce me. I realized then that everything I had done in my moment of glory had become a weapon now turned against me. Still, I didn't give up. I kept trying to tell them the truth. What I'm saying is real. You have to believe me. Aliens are going to destroy the Earth in 1 year. But people just treated it as a joke. Fine, they said. We'll wait a year. And if nothing happens, something is going to happen to you. Their patience with me had reached its absolute limit. 10. Just when I had lost all hope, the aliens found me. They looked at me with amusement. We should thank you, one of them said. If you hadn't tricked them into destroying their weapons, conquering this planet would have taken us much longer. My own words came rushing back to me. I had disarmed the entire human race. And of course, the aliens had planned this all along. The entire scheme had been set in motion the moment I arrived here. This is merely a parallel Earth, the alien explained. It took a great deal of effort to bring you here from your own dimension. Would you like to see how a species goes extinct? You see, this was all you're doing. When a civilization loses the spark of thought, it is not far from death. The alien spoke and then activated its weapon, a massive energy beam aimed at the sky. Once it was fully charged, the entire planet would be annihilated. But his words also gave me an idea. They reminded me of one person, Dr. Thorne, the old scientist who had warned me that I would regret my actions. I knew I had to find him. I asked the alien, if humanity starts to think for itself again, will you spare them? The alien shook its head. Biological evolution is a process. A useless civilization is irrelevant to the cosmos, unless they could take the first step into science. I think I understood. That evening, I slipped away from the aliens and searched the city for Dr. Thorne. I found him. I should have listened to you, I said. I should have helped push human civilization forward, not just stood by and watched. He just looked at me sadly. I saw what those people did to you, Leo. I'm sorry, but I'm powerless to help. I shook my head. This was my mess to clean up. I can't do anything for humanity anymore. I told him, but you can. You can be the next one. And you can do it better than I ever could. I need you to lead them back to the first step of science. Or at least back onto that path. I told DR, Thorne everything I knew, physics, chemistry, engineering, history, all the basic knowledge I had retained from my world. I had him type it all into a computer so he could reference it anytime without having to rely on his own fragile memory. You only have 1 year, I told him. Make it count. Then I left. I had done what I could. The rest was up to him. 11. To my surprise, he didn't do what I did. He didn't go on television or try to become a celebrity by showing off his newfound knowledge. He simply guarded it carefully. He silently used fragments of that knowledge to create something new. He used his own understanding to interpret the things I told him. And finally, after some time, he successfully built a windmill. That's right, a simple, basic windmill. But in this world, that was more than enough. He announced his invention to the world. Many were astonished, but he didn't use it to build his own fame. Instead, he encouraged everyone to work with him to build simple things just like it. He challenged them to use their own ideas to invent something new. A few of the quicker kids took his lesson to heart. They used their own minds, inspired by the windmill, to invent gears. From there, they created more complex, rotating machines. Others used their limited knowledge or their old professional instincts to create new, convenient tools. The age of advanced technology had vanished, but in its place, humanity had returned to a prehistoric era of innovation, the time when we first learned to use tools. He had done it. He had done it perfectly. I went back to the aliens. Looks like your plan failed, I said. We've taken the first step into science, creation. The lead alien smiled and nodded. We have lost this round, but you have not yet won. The universe is vast. We are but one small part of it. You still have much to learn, my child. I watched in shock as the aliens began to shed their outer shells. Underneath, they looked almost human, similar, but not quite the same. He told us they were from another Earth in a different timeline. Their technology was highly advanced, but their people had become lazy and completely dependent on it. Eventually, innovation stopped, and their entire world entered a long, slow decline. After surviving a cosmic catastrophe, they were forced to find a new path. They were lucky enough to discover other timelines, but they were horrified to find that other Earths were suffering from the same stagnation they had. So, to save them, to reawaken these dormant minds, they found me. That was the reason for this entire, elaborate setup. I still couldn't quite wrap my head around it. It was like you're sitting at home eating dinner, and suddenly you're zapped into another dimension and told to go save the world. You have to send me back, I said, my voice firm. They didn't refuse. They told me their work was done here, and it was time for them to continue their journey. The universe was big, and they had only taken their own first small step. That day, I said goodbye to them, and I returned to my own life. Everything was exactly as I'd left it. The two worlds were identical, with one key difference. This world had smart people, dumb people, and a whole lot of average people, just like me. And it was because of all of them that the world was different. It was unpredictable, challenging, and full of color. I no longer thought of myself as a genius. I was just a normal person. Like products in a supermarket, I realized everyone has their own different, unique value.